Okay, so we're looking at the back of the camera now. We're just going to look now at the main functions of things that we need to be considering. So if we start around here first of all, I'll just spin the camera around. We've got a couple of settings on the lens itself. We've got a stabilizer that can stay on, it doesn't really matter. That's in fact only for when we're taking photos. And we've got this automatic and manual focus. In the vast majority of cases we're going to leave it on auto. Only if we're struggling in poor light conditions to focus and it isn't managing to do it would we consider going over to manual, which is very different than the old film camera days. You would always, in fact often you wouldn't even have a camera that had automatic, it would always be manual. But, very different with these ones, so we leave it on auto. I'm just going to take this lead out so we can see clearer on the back. We've now got, I'm just going to look at the basics of turning it on and selecting the right setting for the camera. So that's the on-off switch on the back. As soon as we turn that on, we'll notice this screen. I'll turn the light on this screen. You'll see this screen comes on. So if I turn that off, there's nothing there. If I turn it on, you'll see all the numbers and so forth come on. We'll also see on the screen that we've actually got an image here. Now that tells us, if we can see something through there, that we're already on the video mode. So if we just have a little bit of a close-up on this wheel essentially gives us our various photography or video options. There's only a single video option and it looks like a little camera. So we press the button in and we make sure that we've rotated round to the camera. If we want to take photos, there's a number of different presets, but we'll tend only to work with the one that says AV, which is aperture priority. And we'll talk about that in a separate clip, but usually AV if it's going to be photos, or we spin it all the way around to the video camera if we're going to be taking videos. So really, out of the many options we've got on there, we're only really going to be going with two. There is one other option if we're going to be using the flash, the external flash, but we'll cover that again in a separate clip. So now we're on video because we're going to be taking video today. So the next thing for us to think about, of course, so I'm going to ask Juliana now to sit here. We'll pretend we're going to do an interview clip with her. The next thing, of course, we want to think about is the positioning and the composition of this shot. I'm not going to worry about artistically where she sat, and but we're just going to look at different shot sizes. So if I zoom in from around about here up to the top of the head, so lower chest up to the top of the head, that's what we typically call a medium close-up shot. An extreme close-up shot would be then more from the top of the chest to the top of the head. In fact, now that might even still be considered a medium. So maybe more of an extreme close-up would be, from the top of the head just down to about here. What we tend not to do, unless we're being particularly artistic, is chop off the top of the head. So there we go. We've got. I think we'll go back to our medium close-up. And then we'll lock the camera. So that's it. We've got our shot. That's what we're going to film. The microphone's on top. If you look at the microphone, because it's directional, it's worth just opening it up, twisting it down to make sure it's pointing definitely at her, and we're ready to go. So the other things we want to think about is we've basically got two main settings we want to now consider. One is the aperture, and one is the ISO. So if I can ask you to come in a bit closer. This dial here always deals with, actually there's three settings, sorry, I forgot. This always deals with what's known as shutter speed. Irrelevant when taking photos, but when we're doing video, very important. What it means is anything less than about 30, which is 30 frames per second, will start to look jumpy. So the average TV, so in the UK we have 25 frames per second, that makes up our video. So we see it on television. In America it's 30. So anything less than 25, and we're going to start seeing jutter and jump. So we don't want to go any higher than that, any lower than that. Any more than that, what that allows us to do. So if we're filming at 300 frames a second, it means we can slow it down down to 10% of its original speed, and it will still look fine. So if you've got something that you want to create a little bit of slow-mo, you want a little bit of footage that looks someone walking into the office and you've got a bit of a mood because they're slow, you need to make sure you've got your frame rate set high, and that's this one here. The other one on the front, so there's a little dial. Where is it? Oh dear. Oh no, I'm talking at my backside. Right, the other dial is this circular one here, and this one controls this number here. Now this is the aperture, so this is how big the hole is in the camera when we're filming. We spin it round, it'll go up to 22 and down to 2.8. If we use the little lens, it will go up down to 1.8. Now I'm going to show you, if we look at Juliana on the footage here, if you can see that at 2.8 the exposure is okay. If we start increasing that, she starts to get very dark because the hole in the camera is closing and we're losing the light. But what that allows us to do is it allows us to have things in focus in the background. So, but what we have to compensate, so if we're taking a video of somebody in an environment where we want the background in focus, we have to find another way of increasing the light. So that's where we come to the ISO. So if we look on here, there's a button called ISO. We can press it, and with the same wheel, we can turn it up. So if we come back, it was on 320. We can see in the viewfinder that Juliana's still very dark, but as I start to increase the ISO, she comes back to being bright again. So with I've now got f11, which means most things are in focus, but I've had to increase the ISO to 2500. That means the quality is going to be lower. There's going to be more graininess, but at least I've managed to get the background in focus. If I say, you know what, I just want Juliana in focus, that's fine. I'm going to use this wheel again, and I'm going to bring this 11 down to 2.8. But now you'll notice on the viewfinder it's totally burnt out. So it's totally white, looks horrible, and the reason is it's not automatically adjusting itself. We're doing this stuff manually. We have to do it manually, so we're going back into the ISO setting, bringing that back down until it looks reasonable. I think 320 looks fine. We'll notice the monitor's blurry in the background, which actually for this video is fine because we don't really need to see that monitor. This is a distraction anyway. So we're essentially ready to go. We've got ISO set, we've got the aperture set, we've got the frame rate set. The only final thing to think about is focus. We've got to make sure that this is in focus. Now it's quite hard on these little screens. I'll just unplug this so Juliana can see. It's quite hard on these little screens to see very closely. It'd be very, very easy to start filming to then find that it's totally out of focus. So what we do on here, there's a little button, it's got a little magnifying glass. We press it twice and we can zoom right in, and we manually correct the focus, and then we're ready to go. We press it again, and now we know that that's in focus. Alternatively, so we can, although it's set on automatic focus on the lens, we can still do it manually. Alternatively, we could zoom in and just press the button halfway and it will automatically focus for us, and then we press it again, and now we know we're in focus. Now depending on how we prefer, I said before we'd usually use automatic focus. Actually I realised maybe that's dodgy. Maybe it's safer once it's focused to move it over to manual, because what these don't do is once the filming started, what they don't do is automatically refocus. They're not going to track you and keep in focus for you. So you can either leave it on manual and set the focus. If you haven't got the confidence, you can do it automatically just by half pressing the button, and then if she moves, we need to guess by refocusing, and you can do it, but it's not very accurate because you really can't see enough detail when you're filming to really see whether you're keeping in focus. So if you know someone's going to be moving a lot, even moving backwards and forwards in their chair, I'm going to be really careful with this f2.8 aperture because it really does narrow the depth of field, i.e. very little's in focus, which is great if someone's going to sit still, but if they're going to move at all, then you might want to think about having a higher ISO, but that will cut more light out. But then you'll also need a higher aperture, i.e. this 2.8 will need to go up, but you'll also need to give it extra ISO because the light will be cut out.
And would you still leave it on manual or on manual focus?
Yeah, because all you're going to get with the increased aperture is, so at the moment I'm guessing...
So what I mean is if they move around, you'll have to constantly keep tweaking, whereas if you leave it on autofocus, will it not do it for you? No.
So that's why having a greater aperture is safer, because at the moment you're now in focus. If you just move back, now you're already, so in fact come back in. Okay, just stay there 1 second. Don't even move your chair, just move your head back. Now that's blurry. Move it forwards slowly. That's in focus and out of focus again. So really you've got very, very little room for manoeuvre with an f2.8 setting in order to keep this in focus. So I think, that's too dodgy. I'm going to increase this now to let's say 6.3. It's already gone dark. So I now need to increase my ISO. I'm now sacrificing quality, but it still looks fine. And now if you move back a bit, still in focus. Now you've gone now. In focus, in focus, in focus, in focus, in focus. So you've got much more flexibility with a higher aperture, but the background's now in focus and it's distracting. So I'm going to say to you in this instance, this illustrates as a camera person, what I'm going to say is that it's quite important, because of how sensitive these cameras are, for you to not move backwards and forwards very much. Side to side's fine, but backwards and forwards it's going to confuse it. I'm going to bring the aperture back down. I'll leave it at 3.5, let's say that's a compromise in the middle. Set the ISO to about 400, and that looks okay. And I'm looking at it just to get a sense of how it looks. Okay, so now we're ready to film. I've obviously got to put my mic back together, so I'm going to plug my mic into there. I'm going to plug the lead into there and there, and I'm going to make sure this little lead here is plugged into the side of the camera, and I'm ready to film. All I need to do to film is I press record, and now we're recording. So if you'd like to count to 10 for us.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
And press stop. Now, as I mentioned before, that it's possible that before you got to 10 it said it would flash up filming automatically cancelled. So we have to watch for that. It is possible that as we're filming we'll get these little errors. It's a bit boring, and it does mean I'm saying I'm really sorry, we're going to have to start that again. But now we've filmed, if you want to come around this side, we're going to have a very quick look at how we then review that footage. So all we do is press the play button on the bottom, and there we've got some footage. It's 17 seconds long. I press play again. There we go, that's it. We can see now, it's a very good way of quickly making sure that it was picking up sound. There are other ways in the menus. In fact, I'll show you it quickly since we're recording it. You don't need to necessarily remember it. When you're ready to record, you can press menu and you can move over to sound recording and press that. And you'll see there's now a little screen that's popped up that you can just double check. If I'd accidentally, which is what I've done before, which channel have I got it plugged into? I've got it plugged into the right, so that one is the left, so that won't make much difference. But if I do that, we now lose all microphone. And that's very easy to do. It's very easy to accidentally knock one of those settings. But also, you'll notice it's up on the left and right. If I hit that one, it's now only on the right channel. So we can see very quickly in the menu whether or not we're picking up the signal. And it's worth doing a couple of checks even before. So if you're going to do an interview with somebody, it's worth just checking in before they arrive that the mic said record yourself a little bit, record your fingers clicking, whatever. So that is all we need to cover right now for this quick intro to the camera.